On September, ruinous. 12 Panthers, armed with the formidable 75mm KWK-42 cannon, observed 5 U.S. Sherman tanks traversing the exposed terrain beneath them. The Americans appeared oblivious to the snare prepared for them. The calculations of armored combat looked inevitable. The Panthers' extended 75mm barrel could obliterate a Sherman from 2,000 meters away. Its forward plating, measuring 80mm and sloped at 55 degrees to yield an equivalent of 140 meter, resisted the Sherman's 75-meter weapon entirely, save for perilously near encounters. The Sherman, protected by merely 50mm up front, faced penetration from the Panther at ranges rendering counterattacks pointless. Nevertheless, in merely 4 hours, 8 out of those 12 Panthers lay as smoldering hulks. The 5 Shermans from Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams's 37th Tank Battalion pressed forward without harm. As the day concluded on September 19th, the surroundings of Arracourt brimmed with 49 wrecked German vehicles, whereas U.S. casualties remained negligible. Across the ensuing 10 days up to September 29th, the 4th Armored Division neutralized or impaired 200 German armored units, sacrificing only 48 of their vehicles in return. Such a ratio shattered every tenet of tank engineering revered by the Germans. The events at Arracourt transcended a mere battlefield reversal. They dismantled the Wehrmacht's final delusion, that engineering prowess could surmount what they scorned as Yankee mechanical inadequacy, augmented by vast industrial output. The stunned German remnants realized they weren't clashing with isolated tanks. They confronted a cohesive arsenal that reshaped the contours of contemporary combat. The German riposte stemmed from Hitler's visceral fury over the U.S. surge from Normandy. In early September 1944, with Patton's Third Army surging through France, the Führer demanded an urgent reprisal to shatter the American vanguards and reclaim German honor. The freshly organized 113th Panzer Brigade, alongside the 111th Panzer Brigade and portions of the 11th Panzer Division, struck at Patton's vulnerable side in Lorraine. The 113th Panzer Brigade deployed 45 Panthers and 45 Panzererfours under Oberst Hans-Hinrich Freiherr von Seeckt or similar command. The 111th Panzer Brigade, led by General Lieutenant Heinrich Günther von Kluge or equivalent, matched this force. These formations constituted Germany's final active reserves in the West. Rushed into being, plagued by insufficient training from fuel scarcities, yet outfitted with vehicles that theoretically outclassed American counterparts, the Panther encapsulated German design ethos. Its 75mm Buru 42L70 fired penetrating shells at speeds surpassing 1,000 knot at ease. In typical battle distances, it pierced 140mm at 1,000 meters, sufficient to vanquish any Allied vehicle head-on. Conversely, the Sherman's M3 75mm managed just 88mm at 500 meters and required proximity under 100 meters for a shot at the Panther's frontal shield. German tactics prioritized tank-to-tank confrontations, favoring distant volleys where specs dictated outcomes. At panzer academies, operators honed marksmanship over vast spans, memorized trajectory charts, and drilled ambush configurations. The Panther epitomized this creed. Unbeknownst to the Germans gathering for their push, the Americans had forged an alternate armored strategy, diminishing the weight of solitary specs. Colonel Bruce Clark, instrumental in crafting U.S. armored precepts at Fort Knox, advocated in guides for velocity, synergy, and joint operations beyond lone vehicle prowess. The U.S. Army's method highlighted that tanks seldom engaged solo. They functioned within ensembles, incorporating foot soldiers, cannons, tank hunters, and aerial aid. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Williams Abrams, Jr., at the helm of the 37th Tank Battalion, personified this mindset. A 1936 West Point alumnus shifted from horse to tracks. Abrams perceived armored strife not as mechanical clashes, but as fluid operations where pace, boldness, and teamwork outweighed plating depth. His unit drilled exhaustively in multifaceted maneuvers, focusing on swift spotting and mobile shooting over distant accuracy. The 4th Armored Division devised tailored counters for Panthers. Recognizing direct assaults futile, they rehearsed encircling tactics, obscuring smokescreens, and barrage synergy to pin Germans while Shermans swung for lateral strikes. They leveraged the Sherman's lighter build and dependable mechanics as assets for swift repositioning and enduring campaigns. September 18, 1944. The German counteroffensive. The offensive kicked off as the 113th Panzer Brigade pushed toward Arracourt, anticipating an easy push against fragmented U.S. troops. German scouts had noted just intermittent American activity. Bits of foot soldiers, anti-tank vehicles, maybe a single company of Sherman tanks. Yet, U.S. intelligence outmatched German expectations by a wide margin. Decryptions from Ultra had exposed the enemy buildup well ahead of time. Spotter aircraft kept tabs on every Axis maneuver. The Americans pinpointed German locations with precision, whereas the foes moved forward sight unseen into defenses they figured were feeble. On the morning of September 19th at 0800, 15 Panthers from the 113th Panzer Brigade rolled ahead in standard array close to Resenville. Disaster struck without warning. U.S. spotters had monitored the advance for half an hour. Once the Panthers hit preset map squares, 12 U.S. artillery batteries, totaling 144 pieces, unleashed a coordinated volley. The shelling that hammered the German armor was unprecedented in its ferocity. The Yanks had honed time-on-target barrages, timing shots from varied batteries and ranges to land all at once. Within the opening minute, 3 Panthers lay in ruins, felled not by enemy tanks but by shell fire. The rest pressed on, rattled by the pinpoint and relentless nature of the American barrage. When German Panthers claimed Hill 265, which commanded views over Arracourt, they set up to snare Abrams's oncoming Shermans. At piling 200 meters, the ideal distance for the Panthers' main gun, the Germans let loose. Their initial shot went wide. Before the loader could chamber another round, all 5 Shermans replied in unison, not targeting the Panthers directly, but blasting the earth ahead to churn up thick veils of dirt and fog. Then, the U.S. tanks dispersed. Moments after the Panthers exposed themselves, American observers summoned more artillery. Incendiary white phosphorus rounds erupted amid the German vehicles, scorching viewports and optics with acrid haze. Follow-up blasts tore at treads and sighting ports. Built for accurate long-distance gunnery, the Panthers now grappled with obscured vision and unending strikes. Bursting from the haze arrived the Shermans, attacking not head-on but from 3 flanks at the same instant. They exploited landscape features the Germans had overlooked in their surveys, blind spots that offered concealed approaches. The Shermans closed to under 500 meters, where their cannons could punch through the Panthers' 40mm flank plating. This clash highlighted a key U.S. edge. The Sherman's powered turret could swing a full 360 degrees in just 15 seconds, compared to the Panthers' hand-crank system that required 60 seconds, 4-fold the delay. In tight quarters, that gap turned fatal. Yank loaders, drilled to cycle and shoot in less than 4 seconds, could deliver several hits on Axis tanks before any retaliation. Among the most thoroughly recorded fights was the one where Captain William A. Dwight's Sherman squad ran into German Panthers by Lisi. The formal debrief report states that Dwight's loader, Sergeant Donald Decker, took out 4 Panthers one after another at distances below 800 meters. Decker's first-hand narrative, archived in Army records, offers vivid tactical insights. We rounded the edge of a modest forest, spotting 3 Panthers out in the clear roughly 600 yards off. They were swinging their turrets our way, but we fired first. I slammed 3 armor-piercing shells into the side of the lead one before it could align. The next I caught in the back while it reversed. The last got off a single errant shot, overshooting, prior to us silencing it. This action underscored the American strength in quick reactions. German operators adhered to rigid protocols. The commander spots the foe, estimates distance, the gunner dials in, the loader picks the right shell. U.S. teams relied on gut feel, forged from endless drills. They traded far-off marksmanship for up-close tempo, and in Arracourt's common fight ranges of 500 to 800 meters, velocity trumped exactness. Come September 20th, the Germans mounted a big push involving parts of the 113th and 111th Panzer Brigades. Oberst von Centrup himself spearheaded the drive with 40 Panthers backed by foot troops. The offensive started strong. Axis armor crept forward shrouded in dawn fog, surprising a few U.S. pickets, yet the American counter showed their organized dominance. Almost right away after first contact, every Yankee outfit in the area grasped the German layout. Communication links tying each Sherman to command centers allowed seamless teamwork. Gunners with frontline tank groups summoned instant cover fire. Above all, the fog lifted, paving the way for the 19th Tactical Air Command to join in. Major Charles "Bazooka" Charlie Carpenter, piloting an L-4 Grasshopper spotter plane fitted with 6 rocket launchers, dove straight at the German armor. In an interview with Stars and Stripes on September 25, 1944, Carpenter remarked, "It seems the message is spreading to be cautious around Cubs armed with bazookas. This morning, they spotted me approaching and started evading. It's tough to strike a tank racing at 60 mph over open terrain." The synergy of armored units, heavy guns, and aerial forces formed overlapping zones of coverage that pinned down German units. Panthers halting to confront Shermans found themselves pinned by cannon barrages. Those pressing forward drew strikes from dive bombers. Any seeking shelter were outmaneuvered by swift tank hunters. On September 21st, disaster struck German leadership. Oberst von Seckendorf, adhering to tradition by directing from the vanguard, perished when his lead Panther fell to shelling. His demise swiftly crippled the 113th Panzer Brigade. Junior officers, drilled to obey directives over independent action, were left rudderless. The following day, September 22nd, General Lieutenant von Cellorf Bronart of the 111th Panzer Brigade met the same fate in combat. Losing both leaders in just 48 hours shattered German coordination. By comparison, U.S. tactics prioritized adaptable leadership. If a commander went down, replacements stepped in seamlessly. Captain James Leach, leading B Company of the 37th Tank Battalion, exemplified this adaptability in the September 22nd clash at Juvigny. After a close shell silenced his communications gear, his lieutenants pressed on with the strategy on their own. Leach's 7 Shermans took out 17 enemy vehicles while sacrificing only 1, an accomplishment that won him the Distinguished Service Cross. From September 24 through 23, improving skies unleashed the full might of U.S. dominance in the skies. The 19th Tactical Air Command, headed by Major General Elwood Pete Quesada, had honed precision strikes to a level beyond German capabilities. P-47 Thunderbolts, loaded with explosives and projectiles, swarmed the field in unrelenting flights. Coordination between troops on the ground and pilots overhead flowed without hitches. Spotters embedded in Sherman crews shared identical charts and coordinates with infantry. When armor hit tough opposition, these coordinators could guide attack aircraft to objectives in moments. The P-47s adeptly separated allies from adversaries during rapid passes. U.S. tanks signaled their spots with vibrant markers and signal flares. Reports from seized German papers recount the dread of non-stop overhead assaults. Panthers built for battlefield mastery proved defenseless to dives from the sky. Their 16mm roof plating, sufficient versus shell fragments from above, buckled under straight impacts from 500-pound payloads or 5-inch warheads. Even glancing blows might shatter sights, seize rotations, or injure personnel via shock waves. The Mental Spotter C Company from the 37th Tank Battalion, under Captain Spencer's command, confronted roughly 30 advancing German tanks over exposed flats. Spencer commanded merely 7 active Shermans. Instead of a direct clash, he orchestrated a brilliant maneuver. He concealed his vehicles in defilade spots along a shallow rise, revealing just their gun housings. As the enemy closed in, Spencer's force fired not for kills, but to scatter and steer the German advance. At the same time, he summoned smoke shells from artillery to obscure the foe's vision. As the Germans groped through the haze and volleys, Spencer dispatched 3 Shermans on a side swing via an overlooked gully. These popped up on the German side at close quarters, knocking out 8 Panthers in under 3 minutes. The enemy lineup, struck from multiple angles and sightless in the fog, collapsed. German casualties totaled 17 tanks wrecked and 8 impaired. U.S. side saw 1 Sherman dinged but soon fixed. Come September 24th, the fight exposed deep weaknesses in German tank strategy. Despite the Panthers' engineering edge, it grappled with severe reliability issues that worsened in battle. The U.S. Army's Ordnance Testing Team later reviewed 30 battles. In those, Shermans notched a 3.6.1 destruction rate against Panthers. This stemmed not from better guns, but from greater readiness. The Panthers' rear drive unit, burdened by the 45-ton mass, broke down often. Gearboxes meant for slimmer designs buckled under pressure. The overlapping wheel setup, great for even load spread, got packed with sludge in Lorraine's soggy fields. The landscape posed severe challenges. Overnight frost turned mud into a solid barrier, often halting tanks in their tracks. By comparison, the Sherman's straightforward mechanics emerged as its key strength. It managed to travel vast distances, hundreds of miles, without needing extensive overhauls. Operators could tweak track tension swiftly in just minutes. Swapping out engines took a mere 4 hours. The transmissions, built with ample durability for the vehicle's 33-ton frame, seldom gave out. Even when parts wore down, the use of uniform components allowed for rapid swaps from abundant stockpiles. U.S. repair teams achieved feats that left German mechanics in awe. Under the guidance of seasoned, non-commissioned officers from Fort Knox training, the 37th Tank Battalion's upkeep squad sustained 90% of their Shermans in working order across the entire engagement. German outfits were lucky to hit half that operational rate. Come September 26th, more Panthers fell victim to breakdowns than to combat damage. Logistics ultimately tipped the scales in the Battle of Arracourt. Fuel scarcity plagued both sides as convoys snaked through France, yet the U.S. approach stood in stark opposition to the German plight. Patton's Third Army enforced tight petroleum controls. Armored outfits got 25,000 gallons each day, far short of the ideal 75,000. But this constraint fueled Yankee ingenuity. The famed Red Ball Express truck network hauled 12,000 tons of goods daily along paths stretching beyond 300 miles. When standard deliveries fell short, Patton greenlit unofficial scavenging for fuel. Squads dispatched teams to borrow petroleum from nearby units. The Wehrmacht's logistics crumbled disastrously. Rushed panzer groups had assurances of sufficient gas and shells, but the truth fell far short. Panthers guzzled 2.5 gallons per mile off-road, so a full 200-gallon tank yielded just 80 miles of travel. Amid relentless aerial strikes on routes and bombed-out refineries, German armor frequently idled, awaiting phantom deliveries. Shell shortages added to the woes. U.S. Shermans packed a blend of anti-tank, explosive, and phosphorus ammo, enabling hits on diverse foes. Cannon rounds streamed steadily from Normandy bases. German Panthers, mostly loaded with piercing projectiles, struggled against foot soldiers or unarmored assets. Low on rounds, their operators found resupply impossible amid the fray. U.S. barrage power climaxed on September 26th during a fresh German push. The 4th Armored Division's guns, bolstered by higher echelon support, unleashed salvos from more than 150 pieces onto one spot mere minutes after a call. The American command hub for artillery marked a breakthrough in how barrages were handled. Spotters with wireless sets and detailed charts summoned strikes via basic grid references. Control posts, relying on preset computations and analog calculators, converted calls into orders in moments. Several gun groups fired in unison, shells landing together via synchronized timing. Troops used to the sparse, disorganized barrages of the Eastern Front suffered a mental blow from the sheer weight and precision of Allied shells. Any German buildup drew instant ranging fire, gathering spots drowned in explosions. Daytime advances triggered swift shelling. Records show that on September 26 alone, American batteries loosed over 15,000 projectiles aiding the 4th Armored. German cannon, down to a handful of tubes with scant loads, offered only fitful replies, which U.S. acoustic detection swiftly pinpointed and silenced. The Arracourt clash highlighted the success of American tank hunter tactics. While the Panther focused on protection and punch, the M18 stressed velocity and agility. Hitting 55 mph, the quickest crawler of the war, with its potent 76mm weapon, Hellcats could surge forward unexpectedly, hit enemies, and vanish before retaliation landed. On September 27th, a M18 squad under Lieutenant Edwin Leiper pulled off a flawless hunter maneuver. Hidden along a wooded edge, they let a line of German vehicles roll by, then struck from behind where plating was weakest. Over 12 minutes, Leiper's team knocked out 5 Panthers and 3 Panzer IVs before shifting positions to dodge reprisals. None of the M18s took a scratch. Tank destroyers' impact extended past outright destructions. Their very existence compelled German armor to. Tank destroyers in the M18 units kept a vigilant eye on the sides and behind enemy lines, which hampered forward progress and broke up enemy lines. Their rapid mobility allowed them to counter dangers more swiftly than German reinforcements could capitalize on gaps in the front. When the fighting wrapped up, the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion reported 39 verified destructions for the price of just 4 M18s. The turning point arrived on September 29th as General Hasso von Manteuffel, one of Germany's sharpest panzer leaders, took personal charge of the final big push by German troops. He had shown up on September 27th to take over the battered units, applying his sharp strategic skills right away. Manteuffel's offensive kicked off at 600 hours, featuring the remaining functional Panthers, around 30 vehicles, moving forward alongside foot soldiers from the 11th Panzer Division. Despite shortages in equipment, the operation showed solid skill, making smart use of the landscape and ensuring tight teamwork between armored units and ground troops. Yet, the U.S. countermeasures proved too much. Colonel Bruce Clark, who led Combat Command A, had foreseen the move thanks to intercepted signals. U.S. armored vehicles sat ready in fortified spots, backed by preset barrages from cannons. As the Germans pushed ahead, they stumbled straight into a well-laid trap. The takedown unfolded with precision. Shelling drove a wedge between German foot soldiers and their armored backup. M18s hit from the sides as Shermans anchored the main line. Once the morning mist cleared, squadrons of P-47s swooped in, unleashing havoc from the skies to fuel the chaos. By midday, Monteu's effort had collapsed entirely. 22 German tanks sat wrecked or ditched. The survivors pulled back toward the German frontier, with the Battle of Arracourt concluding on September 29, 1944. The toll was immense. Starting with 262 tanks and self-propelled guns, the Germans held on to only 62 working machines, a 76% depletion. The 113th Panzer Brigade no longer functioned as a viable force. The 111th Panzer Brigade suffered equal ruin. The 11th Panzer Division, a battle-hardened Wehrmacht outfit, dwindled to the size of a single regiment. U.S. setbacks, though notable, paled in comparison. The 4th Armored Division gave up 48 tanks over September 1944, including 25 tanks and 7 tank destroyers right in the Arracourt clashes. Many hit U.S. tanks got fixed fast and rolled back into action. Crew injuries stayed manageable, thanks to the Shermans' improved hatches for bailing out and its roomier interior that sped up exits. The destruction ratio, roughly 3.6.1 tilting toward the Americans, flew in the face of German military theory. The Panther, with its edge in protection and guns, got thoroughly outmatched by the so-called weaker Sherman. Still, the win didn't stem from pure armored duels. It arose from masterful blending of forces, greater adaptability on the ground, stronger supply chains, and dominant cannon and aerial backup. The U.S. Army's prompt review of Arracourt yielded key lessons that shaped tank warfare strategies for years to come. Experts at the Armored Force Board in Fort Knox gathered in-depth accounts from all involved groups, painting a full view of contemporary mechanized combat. For starters, the engagement showed that specs on paper didn't dictate battlefield results. The Panthers' better cannon and shielding counted for little when U.S. troops dodged fights on enemy turf. Through cannon fire to pin down foes, planes to hit from overhead, and flanking moves to slash at vulnerabilities, Americans wiped out German edges in hardware. Next, dependability in machines mattered more than peak speed or power. A Sherman ready for daily duty outshone a Panther sidelined for repairs half the time. The knack for keeping vehicles operational non-stop boosted fighting strength beyond what heavy plating could offer. Thirdly, solid crew prep and on-the-fly tactics beat solo daring. U.S. tankers, shaped by uniform drills at Fort Knox, delivered steady performance. They handled any job inside the vehicle, synced effortlessly with Allied units, and shifted gears amid flux without step-by-step commands. German operators, often raw from heavy attrition and rushed prep, fell short of this baked-in prowess. Finally, supply lines set the limits of big-picture moves. The U.S. talent for delivering gas, shells, and replacements, despite a 400-mile lifeline, sustained non-stop pushes. German units, starved of essentials, watched their choices shrink until stagnation spelled doom. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, whose on-site decisions tipped the scales all through the action, laid out a thorough rundown in his post-battle summary. Abrams stressed that success flowed not from one element alone, but from the thorough rollout of integrated arms principles. His three, the 7th Tank Battalion, had shown that bold maneuvers backed by artillery and aerial support could overcome enemies with more advanced technology. Abrams went on to serve as the U.S. Army's Chief of Staff, and his encounters at Arracourt shaped American armored strategies all the way through the Cold War era. The M1 Abrams tank, which honors his legacy, incorporated key insights from ARA, prioritizing dependability, protection for the crew, and seamless system coordination above mere technical details. From the German perspective, General Hasse von Manteuffel offered one of the sharpest evaluations. During after-action debriefings, Manteuffel remarked that Arracourt exposed the flaws in German battlefield tactics. The Wehrmachter's focus on technological edge and solo fighter skills had fallen short against the Americans' methodical approach to fighting. The U.S. forces had transformed warfare into an industrial operation where efficient structure and supply chains ensured success. The clash at Arracourt marked a victory for American information collection and analysis. Decrypts from Ultra gave early alerts about German buildups. Ground patrols by armored cavalry units and spotter planes delivered ongoing reports on enemy locations and shifts. Blending data from diverse channels yielded remarkable visibility on the field. Colonel Oscar Coe, the G2 intelligence head for the Third Army, pioneered methods for merging intel streams. His team linked ultra signals with overhead photos, enemy POW questioning, and seized papers to form thorough profiles of the foe. In Arracourt, U.S. leaders frequently grasped German plans ahead of the enemy troops themselves. Such foresight amplified American fighting strength. Anticipating attack points let them deploy backup forces wisely. Grasping German fuel limitations allowed maneuvers that drained their resources through overextension. Recognizing mechanical issues in German gear encouraged relentless advances that blocked repairs and regrouping. The vital yet overlooked work of repair crews warrants particular praise. The 126th Ordnance Maintenance Battalion, aiding the 4th Armored Division, achieved engineering feats amid the fighting. Working from advanced outposts amid sporadic shelling, repair squads sustained American tanks at exceptional readiness levels. Master Sergeant John Fulner, leader of a maintenance platoon, outlined the setup in a 1945 chat with Yank magazine. We'd perfected production line fixes like clockwork. Track fixes in 1 hour, engine changes in 4 hours, transmission overhauls in 6 hours. Spare components were stored at company, battalion, and division scales. When gear failed, we'd repair or swap it out in under a day. This repair prowess got battle-damaged vehicles back online swiftly. A Sherman struck on Monday might rejoin the fray by Wednesday. In contrast, German Panthers, needing rare tools and limited parts, could sit idle for weeks or longer if retrieval was even possible amid U.S. barrages and strikes from above. Battlefield performance relied heavily on health services as well, where Americans enjoyed clear superiority. The 4th Armored Division's medical unit handled wounded from pickup to operating table in just an hour. That critical window sharply boosted survival odds. Tank crew injuries brought distinct hurdles. Severe burns, limb losses from trauma, and shock effects demanded prompt expert treatment. U.S. medical protocols stressed frontline operating facilities with skilled personnel. Blood plasma, painkillers like morphine, and antibiotics such as sulfameds reached frontline units. Though nascent, airlifts by helicopter rescued severely hurt crew members who otherwise might perish waiting for wheeled transport. The morale boost from robust care systems was profound. U.S. tankers charged forward boldly, secure in the knowledge that injuries didn't mean doom. German crews, facing sparse aid and dicey rescues, held back more hesitantly. This sense of security fueled direct gains on the ground. Conditions at Arracourt added a vital yet intricate layer to the outcome. Dense morning mist from September 18th through 21st at first aided German advances, concealing their moves and blunting U.S. edges in spotting for guns. Yet the haze also nullified the Panthers' standoff firing prowess, drawing fights closer where Shermans could hit back meaningfully. As skies opened up from September 21st to 23rd, American strength surged. Unobstructed air cover dominated the scene. Sharp sightlines let gunners target far-off threats. Fall sunlight baked the soggy ground, easing travel for the nimbler Shermans, even as Panthers bogged down from their greater weight. Then, downpours hit again September 24th to 26th, churning soil into mire that hit German efforts hardest. The Panthers bogged down on roads. The intricate wheels on the tanks, meant for even weight distribution, got packed with mud that turned to ice during the night. Numerous Panthers ended up stuck, not from enemy fire, but because the iced-up dirt seized their suspension systems. In contrast, Shermans featuring more straightforward tracks managed to push through using their engines alone or with brief repairs. U.S. dominance in radio signaling offered yet another key edge. The 4th Armored Division ran several radio channels at once, including those for command, artillery support, supply lines, and aircraft assistance. Each Sherman came equipped with a pair of radios, enabling crews to track various bands. The SCR 528 unit in U.S. vehicles delivered dependable voice links over distances greater than 10 miles. Its partner, the SCR 506, facilitated ties with backup units. These frequency-modulated systems, tough against jamming and eavesdropping, allowed for protected battlefield planning that the Germans simply couldn't rival. On the German side, systems relying on limited radios with brief reach often broke down amid fighting. The Fu-5 outfit in typical Panthers reached just about 2 miles effectively. Once command vehicles fell to U.S. artillery, prime objectives for them, lower units cut off completely. Such radio failures hastened the German breakdown on the field. The clash at Arracourt confirmed the huge U.S. commitment to building training facilities. At Fort Knox, home to the Armored Force School, experts had crafted the globe's most thorough program for tank operators. All U.S. personnel involved in Arracourt finished 17 weeks of core and specialized personal drills, 13 weeks of team-based exercises, 8 weeks of integrated unit maneuvers, real shooting drills with complete ammo loads, and hands-on upkeep sessions for all vehicle parts. This regimen fostered uniform high standards. Any U.S. tank team could sync seamlessly with others, relying on shared methods and strategies. Losing specific personnel, though heartbreaking, rarely crippled operations since everyone knew multiple jobs. By 1944, German preparation had fallen apart. Scarce fuel cut back on driving drills. Limited shells curtailed shooting practice. The intricate Panther demanded in-depth instruction that rushed new formations couldn't deliver. Plenty of German drivers at Arracourt logged under 100 hours in tanks, dwarfed by the over 1,000 hours typical for U.S. teams. Arracourt fits into the wider context of September 1944's crumbling Wehrmacht across theaters. Red Army troops had shattered Army Group Center and neared Germany's frontiers. Western allies freed France and Belgium. Air raids crippled German factories. Romania's defection severed vital fuel routes. The Arracourt push marked one of Berlin's final bids to seize momentum in the West. Its flop signaled Germany lacked power for major attacks anymore. Wiping out vital Panthers and seasoned operators, resources beyond replacement at that point, spurred the overall German downfall. For the U.S., Arracourt endorsed their full war strategy. Blending factory output, structured drills, tech fusion, and adaptable maneuvers outshone German engineering and principles. The fight proved U.S. tactics could topple foes in any setting, a principle shaping American military thought for the latter 20th century. Grasping Arracourt demands acknowledging the factory backbone behind U.S. success. The Detroit Tank Arsenal, or Fisher Tank Arsenal, captured the essence of American manufacturing. Erected in only 6 months, it churned out 1,000 tanks per month by 1944. The setup prioritized uniformity and dependability above peak specs. All Shermans shared swappable components. Transmissions matched exactly. Engines swapped effortlessly. Such consistency let repair squads store spares assured they'd work on any model. German output, however, grappled with endless tweaks and upgrades that snarled assembly and fixes. Panthers from varied plants or eras often mismatched in pieces. Chasing ideal tech bred supply headaches, worsening as bombs hammered industry. Come September 1944, U.S. plants rolled out 2,000 Shermans monthly against under 400 Panthers from Germany. That 5.1 edge in numbers, paired with better durability boosting real combat power, forged crushing advantages on the ground. During Arracourt, U.S. forces locally outnumbered foes by over 3.1, even against planned German focus points. Past the figures and battlefield breakdowns stood the raw human side of tank battles. Armored fighting wasn't just the armored clashes, frequently romanticized as sterile mechanical contests. actually unfolded as harrowing ordeals marked by flames, blasts, and fatalities. Those who battled at Arracourt, both American and German, showed remarkable bravery amid perils of the utmost severity. Even with its triumphs, the Sherman tank proved susceptible to devastating obliteration. When a Panther round struck a Sherman, it might detonate stored rounds, sparking a blaze that afforded escaping crews mere moments to flee. The vehicle's moniker, Ronson, borrowed from the lighter brand touted for igniting on the first try every time, captured this grim vulnerability. German crews endured comparable nightmares. Panthers struck by white phosphorus rounds became engulfed in poisonous fumes. Inside, members confronted a grim dilemma: remain and choke or bail out amid hails of machine gun bullets. Commanders, who typically operated with hatches ajar for improved sightlines, exposed themselves especially to shrapnel from overhead artillery detonations that peppered the interiors. Injuries inflicted agony on survivors. Scorches occurred routinely, stemming from brushes with searing steel, ignited petroleum, or incendiary phosphorus that overwhelmed medical capabilities of the era. Splinters from blasts often led to brutal limb losses. Nearby detonations could yield lasting cerebral damage, invisible yet profound. Still, within the carnage, glimmers of compassion surfaced. U.S. medics tended to German casualties right beside their compatriots. Armored units endangered themselves to rescue foes from infernos. French locals, scarred by years of Nazi control, extended help to hurt soldiers from either army. Arracourt yielded a host of German captives whose questioning unearthed key insights, handled per Geneva Convention standards. These sessions exposed severe German logistics woes and plummeting spirits. Detained tank operators detailed scarcities of fuel that cramped their maneuvers. They noted rushed minimal drills to save resources. Gripes surfaced about breakdowns that sidelined half their machines prior to engagement. Above all, they voiced astonishment at U.S. resource dominance. The barrage of cannon fire, relentless bombings from the sky, endless shell stockpiles. How Americans handled POWs adhered to rigorous guidelines, astonishing those schooled in the Eastern Front's savagery. Detainees got proper care, sufficient rations, and safeguards. Such decency, clashing with regime tales of Yankee savagery, frequently prompted forthright disclosures in questioning. Insights from these sessions delivered strategic edges across the fight. Grasping fuel deficits helped schedule assaults during enemy immobility. Insights into repair issues spurred relentless chases to block fixes. Knowledge of officer losses permitted capitalizing on disrupted hierarchies. Arracourt laid waste to the surrounding French landscape near this modest Lorraine village. Residents who had weathered 4 years of enemy rule became trapped amid clashing forces during their freedom's dawn. Arracourt's mayor, addressing U.S. journalists post-conflict, recounted the ordeal. The din was unreal. Unending booms from rounds, roaring tanks discharging, planes droning above. Numerous dwellings lay in ruins. Yet it signaled freedom's approach. Spotting scorched German armor confirmed American victory. Though records of non-combatant deaths remain imprecise, losses proved heavy. Barrages and armored volleys spared neither foes nor homes. The village swapped control repeatedly, each shift unleashing ruin. Post-war surveys found most locals thankful for release, cost notwithstanding. Resistance fighters supplied vital tips to U.S. troops. Arracourt's legacy stretched well past its battlefield gains. It entered mandatory curricula at the U.S. Army's Command and General Staff College, where aspiring leaders dissected its teachings. The seamless blend of infantry, armor, and support showcased there shaped U.S. warfighting blueprints. The engagement molded armored design thinking. As Soviets and Germans chased bulkier chassis with larger calibers, Yanks stressed durability, uniformity, and coordinated systems. The M26 Pershing and subsequent M48 Patton models embodied these priorities above raw specs. Cold War NATO strategies openly invoked Arracourt's takeaways to counter Soviet tank hordes. The idea of countering advanced yet outnumbering threats via gunnery, aviation, and fluid tactics derived straight from the 4th Armored's playbook. The triumph of the 4th Armored Division over German Panther tanks at Arracourt marked a pivotal shift in tank battles, as noted by contemporary military scholars. This engagement signaled the transition from mass-produced conflicts of the industrial era to the interconnected operations of the information age. The U.S. Force's skill in synchronizing diverse armaments on the spot foreshadowed today's network-centric strategies, where dominance in data amplifies fighting effectiveness. After the war, German analyses of Arracourt delivered harsh assessments of their own shortcomings. In the 1950s, the Bundeswehr's historical branch reviewed the clash and determined that defeats occurred across strategic, operational, and tactical dimensions. On the strategic front, deploying final reserves to a minor front amid the Eastern Front's downfall revealed a disastrous distribution of assets. Operationally, the rushed formation of panzer units lacking proper preparation, supply chains, or joint force integration ensured defeat. Tactically, clinging to extended-range armored engagements disregarded the need for adaptability on the ground. Interviews with German survivors from the 1960s and 1970s repeatedly highlighted their astonishment at U.S. prowess. They anticipated confronting troops dependent on sheer volume of equipment, but weak in maneuver. Yet, they faced units that dominated in tactics, innovation, sustainment, and command across the spectrum of contemporary combat. Over time, Arracourt has taken on legendary status that can sometimes veil the actual events. While tales of 5 Shermans overcoming scores of Panthers draw from real skirmishes, they must not eclipse the core reality. U.S. success stemmed from comprehensive dominance, not isolated feats. The Sherman, frequently mocked in mainstream accounts, showed at Arracourt that conflicts are decided by coordinated arsenals, not standalone machines. Despite the Panther's engineering brilliance, it faltered as merely an isolated vehicle. The Sherman thrived within a cohesive team of artillery, aviation, foot soldiers, and supply networks. This fight illustrated that battlefield success arises from blending various elements: preparation, strategy, sustainment, innovation, and guidance. No isolated strength, however impressive, can surmount holistic weaknesses elsewhere. That principle endures as today's armies weigh tech progress against overall readiness. The Arracourt campaign, spanning September 18 to 29, 1944, transcended a mere tactical win. It affirmed the U.S. doctrinal evolution forged in the interwar years, the notion that the virtues of an industrial republic could convert into martial edge via methodical use of unified forces. German troops reached Arracourt, assured of their engineering edge and combat methods. The Panther, boasting its formidable cannon and heavy plating, appeared poised to crush the slimmer Sherman. Crews steeped in Prussian heritage trusted their combat expertise would trump U.S. resource plenty. They found, however, that warfare had advanced past their grasp. The Americans avoided duels of armored icons. They executed holistic maneuvers, treating tanks as one piece of the puzzle. Field guns, aircraft, reconnaissance, transport, and signals fused to generate irresistible advantage no plating could resist. Stunned German remnants brought home a fact no rhetoric could deny. They had met a combat style beyond replication. Not due to superior U.S. tanks, they were not, nor from bolder U.S. troops. Valor knew no borders, but from an American framework that leveraged each asset for exponential force. Lieutenant Colonel Abrams, leading the 37th Tank Battalion, exemplified how triumphs in advanced battles derive from holistic fusion, not lone excellence. Those 5 Shermans, appearing vulnerable to Panther gunners that September dawn, backed by the might of U.S. industrial might, a power that would compel Nazi Germany's total capitulation in under 8 months. At Arracourt, Panzer operators grasped what POWs in Allied camps were learning too. U.S. might resided not in particular gear or ploy, but in marshalling, provisioning, and aligning massive power where it mattered most. They had tested democracy's forge and realized it surpassed a mere stockpile. It embodied a total combat architecture they could not rival. The meadows near Arracourt, strewn with wrecked Panthers, narrated the outcome. Engineering prowess clashed with structural mastery, and structure prevailed. Surviving German crews bore this insight to a fracturing empire. They had glimpsed warfare's tomorrow, and it belonged to America.